is Lauren Hollows from NOI Education Services, and we are continuing our wonderful interview series. Today, I am lucky enough to have with me Peter Doukas from Denison Toyer. I have been working alongside Peter for many, many years. He's definitely a font of wealth and one of the best people from a legal RTO perspective.
You're getting whoever they can find running an RTO, who's not scared about fit and proper issues, right? You're getting the answer, ironically, is what the answer to this question is the answer to the question at the beginning. Do we want a professional set of RTO management or not? Because if we do, the fit and proper person regime we had will not produce that. Because those professionals are imperfect people who are often very private, who are career-driven people that don't necessarily need. So ideally, in an ideal world, you want someone running an RTO that doesn't need to run an RTO. They can run a school, they can run a higher ed provider, or they can run, as I've seen a lot happen, they can run internal in-house training in institutions that have lost faith in the vet sector.
Yeah.
That's unfortunately what I've seen. And that's this is Australia, because we're going to end up with a grey market of trainees and training being undertaken in an unaccredited form by companies internally. Yeah. Specifically around continuing development or professional development or CP or other form of CPD. But this affects the Cricos business, because if you have weakened RTO owners who find it impossible, who worry about their investments in their businesses, who worry about their ability to sell their businesses, who constantly worry about re-registration and whether they're ever going to get re-registered, on top of the increasing costs of doing business in Australia, like rent and all the other things. So you've already got those other business concerns overlapped with the requirements, with the idea that they could now be sanctioned not only by the education regulator, but by the immigration minister for the enrollment practices of students that they often have very little control over in practice. They should have control, and it is their obligation to have control. I know I've given this advice to people, to RTOs, that you need to have full control and full visibility over this. It's your responsibility about the information that you obtain from your students. It's your responsibility. Look at what the standards say. Look at what the national code says. But in practice, they literally don't have the hands-on control over it, and they're often faced with this horrible choice of, do you want the students or not? Yeah. And what do you say to, and then they have the question of financial viability. Yeah. So it's
a hard market to operate in. Like I give full credit to those who run RTOs. It's not an easy business.
No. Not at all.
And there are, I mean, despite what everyone's, there are so many easier ways to make money than running an RTO.
Without a doubt.
It is a labor of love, for a lot of people.
It is. Yeah. I mean, I have to say, I have had many conversations with people that want to give it up, RTO owners who are either under sanction or in this hard time in between, where they just want to give up the whole thing. They've invested hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in these businesses, and they just give up. And I've had to either counsel them into doing that or out of doing that. And I think that's the most difficult part of my work. And often, I mean, and again, it's not, it isn't actually ASQA's fault, but I do say it's all of our problems, because Australia needs international education for, I think, much more for the intangible reasons than it needs it for the practical stuff. Forget about it being the second largest export market and all the other things like that. There is an intangibility about it that gives value to Australia more than anything else, because when you're it is a form of soft power that we have nationally. It's a form of soft power where if we're spitting out 1 million people every year as graduates of our international educational institutions, whether it's vet or higher ed.
By proxy, we're exporting the values of Australia.
Well,
as well.
and if these students and if these people who are no longer the traditional lower class, struggling people from the developing world coming here and looking to work and leave, coming here and doing what they used to do, and having it as exclusively a pathway to visas. And these are savvy students now who may not want to live in Australia. They want to study as part of their career and move on to something else, somewhere else. So we are exporting through our education industry our values, not only in education but our values generally
in our culture.
It is very, very important. I say to our presence, it's one of the reasons that we internationally, for a relatively small population, have such a big impact. And I say that we can't jeopardize it by unnecessary regulation. It's not about silly regulation. It's about unnecessary regulation in certain things. There is necessary regulation about the way that they interact. I do believe that there needs to be a review of international agencies. Then the government needs to just stomach it and deal with it, because I can tell you from the coalface, I have never met a vet practitioner who says that the agencies are entirely innocent in this process.
No. Well, look, I've got whole YouTube episodes where I've gone off on agents, and it's problematic. Like it's just this massive loophole that concurrent enrollments you can close up by all means. I'm sure that will have some impact, but the real impact is going to be I don't think so.
I don't think it's going to have an impact. I don't think the concurrent enrollment thing is going to have an impact, because all that will do is there will be the idea of not being able to change your enrollment or move it in the first 6 months of being in Australia.
But it's not the first. But no. I'll call you on that, because it's not the first 6 months of being in Australia. It's the first 6 months of the primary course, and for a lot of people, that's the highest level course. So it's not 6 months; it's 2.5 years. If it was 6 months, I would not have an issue with it, because I think that that's well and truly fair. Even the first year, stick it out with your provider for the first year. Asking someone to stick it out with a provider for 2.5 years when they get 6 months into the course and go, I actually don't like this course anymore, this is not for me, that's where I have the problem with it. Do you know what, like I think that is something that needs to be changed, because there are people who come here and they study something and they might not like it. I mean, I studied 3 things before I found the thing that I finished.
Me too. But that's the difficulty. I mean, this is that problem of regulation that we were discussing earlier. Because as you're there as a student, why should international students not have the same, within reason, within the bounds of our laws, freedoms and privileges that Australian students have? Yeah. Right. All you're going to do is breed resentment from that student cohort. Yeah. Right. You have. Because you don't know a student can't do an assessment on an RTO.
No, they don't. No, as you said, they're led by agents who have monetary, like that. There's a monetary, reason as to why they push them one way or another.
Absolutely. The money in the bank thing doesn't bother me that much. I mean, relatively speaking, I think it's got more to do with the lower dollar than anything else, because our dollar's kind of dropped since before COVID. So I think in international terms, it's not a big hit. If our dollar goes up, I think the government would change that, because I don't think it's practical, in particularly for the vet perspective. But it never bothered anyone before, so it's not like they're doubling it. So I think that's not a big deal. I think we're now. Well, I think what we've got to come to terms with is that our value proposition for international education has changed since COVID. We are now selling to the middle class and the aspirational classes of the source countries for the most part. We are no longer selling to people to the traditional international students. So we can't pretend. And this goes from the regulator through the big providers through to the small providers and the ones just starting out now. We can't pretend that business as usual, business as pre-COVID usual will apply and will work, right? And I've encouraged RTOs to invest in their presentation. There's a particular suburb of Sydney that's known for being a hotbed of multiple, very small, very bad RTOs, all shoved together in one building or two buildings. And the students, not knowing which college they were attending, and they were, it was for a long time, a hotbed of poor teaching, poor student experience, let alone the fact that it was always the subject of ASQA reviews, which were correct. I mean, these places needed to be shut down. But that economy is gone now. I don't think that those students that were attending those kinds of colleges in that way will be coming back in the numbers that they were. I think that because practically speaking, education is expensive. Yeah, education is expensive relative to the other options that people have around the world. So we need to build, I say, and again, I take my lead from ASQA in terms of the mantra for the industry, in terms of capability and commitment. I think also the third key word should be the value proposition, because the value.
Well, I can sit online and learn anything I want to learn. If I'm motivated enough, I can learn pretty much anything, any skill I want, and I can do it for free. The reason why I come and study at another country is because of the broad overarching experience that I'm going to have, integrating with the culture.
Yeah, exactly. I remember, if I can tell you a story, I remember when back in 2018, we had a college that was actually doing the right thing. They were being monitored for attendance, but they were generally high 70s as an average, right? So that means that the majority of their students were attending 80% of the time at least,
which is good.
Which is good. So they were pretty good. Anyway, ASQA didn't like them, but they were, and we were in the middle of audit, and I was worried about a raid, and we were worried that ASQA was going to come in and visit them. And again, this college invested a lot of money in keeping the students wanting to come to campus.
Yeah.
And for the most part, we worked out that the problem actually wasn't attendance, it was record keeping. People were coming late and not signing in properly and leaving or not signing in. So we actually had proper attendance. Yeah. Anyway, the regulator of the past didn't like it, and of course we got a raid. We got a visit from 5 auditors, and it just so happened to be on a Friday afternoon at 4 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, which is when ASQA, in their experience, had all of the students missing, so they would walk into empty colleges, and this was the old thing. In this particular college, every Friday was a free drinks party, so every student was there at the same. So ASQA basically walked in, getting ready for a raid, to see the entire student cohort minus 2 or 3 people, so 400 people in this place, all having drinks, all having a party, because it was their process. Every week they would have one party every week, and it just so happened to have been a party.
Very smart.
It worked, and it was a happy ending in terms of the ASQA audit. But I think there are that was a lot of foresight for that little provider at the time, and that's what I'm encouraging people to do now. I think we need to invest a lot in presentation of the sector, but also in presentation not just of the individual colleges, but the presentation of the offering, it's doing something that other providers, it's building that value proposition once your students are here. Also, having the guts to cancel them, having the guts to actually police. This is all for Cricos, but having the guts to actually police non-responsive or non-cooperative students.
Yeah, you have to be the bad guy from time to time, because otherwise you're not being fair, and everyone sees that you're not being fair. And every time I've run international colleges, that's the first, there's no hesitation. Once you start playing favorites,
Correct.
it goes through the college like wildfire, and they go, no, like,
Correct.
why should I do this when it, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So,
Absolutely.
if I'm going to be fair with you guys as students, you guys have got to be fair with me. I have a responsibility as the RTO. You guys have a responsibility as students. Like,
Correct.
you've got to hold everyone to the same account.
That's the point, and that's the point. So I think that, as we start seeing these new regs come into effect and start getting applied, my guess is that providers that are obvious investors in their offering will be given a lot more slack, than those that are not, than those that are just in it for the outcome, just in it for the money, and that are visibly in it for the money. You can tell. You can especially tell, given that, I mean, I spend most of my time in Sydney. I walk into Sydney RTOs all the time. You can tell the ones that are proud about their premises, the ones that are the RTOs that actually invest in what they're delivering, versus people that just want to tick the box and shove as many people as possible into a venue. So
I think that the overarching lesson is then, if you are an RTO, if you are an agent, if you are a third party, it is always a good time. It's a timely reminder to tighten up processes, to look at what you're doing, to reach out and get the additional help if you feel you need it, to do your own internal audit, to appreciate that there is going to be a slight overcorrection, and that will probably result in some people needing to come and get services and help from people like yourselves, or some of those, experts in the area. We may see a little bit of that, and then that kind of, it'll be that little swing back. So it's the timely reminder: do your checks, do your internal audits. If you need help, reach out to people. If people do need to reach out to you, how can they reach out to you? How can they find you?
Through the link at the bottom of this video, hopefully. But
absolutely,
my denisontoyer.com is the website, or you can find me on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. And you have been, obviously, you do fairly regularly present at different at different events throughout throughout the year as well. So chances are, if you're attending one of the major events, you will either see Pete presenting, or you will see Pete around. So thank you very much, Peter, for your time.
Thank you. I intend to be, I think I'm going to be hosting an event in November in my office in Sydney about regulatory compliance. So I'll put out something about that too.
Absolutely. And we will, of course, share that across all of our channels as well. You guys can find the link for Pete's LinkedIn and also for Denison Toyer in the information and the comment section below. If you do have any comments, we always encourage healthy conversation and debates. Please put your comments below. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time. Thank you so much, Peter, for your time. I think I took up 5 of your billable 15-minute slots. So thank you very much for that. Have a great day, guys. My name is Lauren Hollows for NOI Education Services with Peter Doukas of Denison Toyer.
Thank you.